Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode of BiblioTech On Air. I'm Rosanna.
I'm Ruby.
And I'm Israel.
Today we're going to be covering our latest Libros and Libations pick, Severance by Ling Ma, available on cloudLibrary. Before we get into it, quick summary. Severance by Ling Ma follows Candice Chen, a young woman living in New York City during a global pandemic caused by Shen fever, which leaves people stuck in mindless routines until they die. Candice, immune to the fever, stays in the city documenting its downfall through her photography blog. Eventually, she joins a group of survivors led by Bob, a controlling leader, on a journey to a supposed safe haven. As they reach an abandoned mall, Candice questions Bob's authority and plans her escape. The novel explores themes of capitalism, consumerism, and the immigrant experience in a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, and so we do have some one-star reviews to get us started before we get into our questions and what we thought about the book. So, one goes, boring, boring, boring. I am an avid reader, and this is by far the worst, most drawn-out, boring book I have ever read. I kept hoping for a glimmer of excitement, a glance at reality, something, anything, and it delivered a big, fat nothing. Don't waste your money. Okay. The next one is just depressing. Was hoping for an upbeat surprise. Instead, it had a surprisingly depressing ending. If you're a pessimist, you won't be surprised as I was. And then the last one says, lacks character development. This book was really well reviewed, but I found it a bit tedious. I get the comment on our consumer culture, but it needed more to fill out the book. The main character talked about people in her life, like her past boyfriend, the leader of the group she joins, and the characters are never fleshed out. And I kept thinking she was stupid to waste time with them. What was so compelling about these people and her life? There are other dystopian novels like Station 11 that are just better.
Dang.
Name dropped one of your
I
favorites.
know they did.
Yeah, I did name drop one of my favorites.
But also like that second review, like depressing. What do you think it's going to be?
Yeah.
It's about
It's
the
a
end of the
pandemic.
world. Like, what, you think it's going to be all sunshine and butterflies? And like, I can book tickets to Disneyland now. The rides are going to be empty.
That's kind of true, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So starting off, how does the novel explore the impact of capitalism on personal identity and work? In what ways do the character jobs define them? Homegirl's all about work.
Yeah, that's all she was. Yeah, to the very end, right? Until she met up with Bob and his crew.
Yeah, like she was so determined to meet or to stay until her deadline or whatever, like November 11th. I was like, man, that's dedication.
Even her
during
other
the
coworkers,
pandemic.
like even them, they were just like, nah, we're dipping. Like, you want to come with us? She's like, I gotta send some emails.
Yeah, dude, that's
Yeah.
crazy. And like the 911 too was telling her like, is your managers there? Like, is any office managers there? And she's like, no, I don't think so. And they're like, well, girl, what are you still doing there?
Why are you there? We're not gonna come fix the elevator.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get caught up in making money, working towards not even your own goal, but like goals that the powers that be define for you in this, right? But we also see it with the taxi driver that was giving her rides. She met up with him again, but he was fevered at this point. To the very end, he was doing his thing, the thing that he was always doing. I think it just really it becomes their entire being, right? So when they're alive, not fevered, they're just consumed by working and their job. At least the characters that we've seen, like Candice and things like that, and then her coworkers. But then we see when they become fevered, same thing, right? So it's two ends of a coin. You're alive, following procedures. You're dead, following procedures. Yeah, but that's what I think about.
All right, so on to the next question. How does routine play a significant role in the characters' lives, especially in the context of the pandemic? What does the novel suggest about the comfort and dangers of routine? Which is what we just kind of like hit a little bit right now. I mean, there's definitely something soothing to an extent about having a routine, knowing what's going to happen, having that procedural part of the day where you can just like slip in and like nothing. But at the same time, what about when something disrupts that routine?
Exactly.
If you're someone who's such a creature of habit, how do you cope with that? Like, there's people who thrive on just like, bring on the unexpected. Cool. But on the flip side, it can be detrimental for a person.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because, as you said, when something disrupts that routine, there's some people who thrive in that. There's some people who don't. Well, there was a global pandemic that happened in this book, and there is no routine. Like, you have to live the unexpected, right? And we see that them having to them scavenging for food, them scavenging for medicine, even for entertainment. They're not living a routine life. I mean, because anything could happen. Anything could happen. Just like we see with Ashley, one of the characters. They go to her house and she contracts a fever because they go to her house, right? And I like that you said something, Rosanna, prior, is that it's that nostalgia that kind of triggers it as well, right? I think that's a cool take. I like that.
Yeah, because it kind of seems like we don't get confirmation for sure, but
Yeah.
like one of the takes was that like we don't see it happen to Ashley until she goes home, until she's digging through her room, trying on these outfits, and then just immediately falls into that, like, you know, pattern of just trying on outfits and outfits and outfits.
I can see that. That makes sense. I feel like, I don't know, like that nostalgia like triggers something in you and you want to go back to that. So then you're like, okay, I'm just going to stay here. I want to stay here. It's like comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mind-numbing in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And then the next question, it kind of talks about her experience, right, as a first-generation immigrant. So how does Candace's experience as a first-generation immigrant shape her perspective throughout the story? In what ways does it influence her relationships with other characters?
It's definitely something that weighs on her throughout the book, because we find out that she was born in China. Her parents are, you know, don't immigrate here until, well, they immigrate first, I think, and then she's brought over to the States. And immediately when she comes over to the States, she's noticed like her mom's had a big change. She's become more authoritarian, more like kind of, you need to be this way. Like, you know, the classic you mentioned before, the classic American dream, where it's all about being successful, all about making money. And Candace, you kind of see that when she gets that offer, like when she's finally getting that big like money amount deposited into her account, she's like, I've done it.
Yeah. Yeah, and even at that, working so hard at this company, what is it called? Spectra, right? She's working so hard. She's working towards a transfer to the art department because she works in the Bible department. And that idea and that goal is shattered because of the pandemic that happens. And so they offer her more responsibility, but it's for what point? Right? Because you have people dying, you have people who are becoming fevered, and she's over here working towards what?
Nothing.
Money. Because like you said, she sees that amount and she's like, oh man, I completely forgot that today is the date that when my contract ended. And it's only until then, right? Because everybody else leaves in the office, and it's only until she's confronted with the money that she's like, okay, well, what now?
Yeah.
Right.
You
Because
know?
she stayed there, and now that she has all that money, there's literally nothing to do with it.
I was worried for her when she went in the elevator and it wasn't working. That part, like, dude, what if she got stuck in there?
How did she, like, it like ends up falling too, right?
But like, power comes back on at like,
Yeah,
And then she
something.
just gets out.
But I would have been so scared. I would have been so scared at that happening again.
Okay, but why would you take an elevator during the pandemic too?
honestly, like just
Elevators are
just-
sketchy to begin with, and especially now
Yeah.
in a time where everything's just kind of chaotic.
I mean, to her defense, I guess, working on the 32nd floor of a building.
It literally wouldn't kill you to take the
but
stairs.
yeah. At
But
that
she,
point, it's
but
like,
like
I
at
take
that,
the
but
stairs.
like, but she moves all her stuff in from her house to her office.
Yeah, she just essentially lives in the Spectra building at that point.
and it's just like, maybe make the first floor your
Oh yeah,
office area.
like you choose to go to
Yeah.
But I mean, that's like the whole gripe with her throughout this whole book. It's like, why are you doing these things? And it's just like, just the fact that it's something that she knows, something that
Yeah.
she's comfortable with.
And
Yeah.
the next question, it talks about the theme of isolation in the novel, right? So how do these characters cope with their solitude, and what does the story say about the importance of human connection? She didn't have any human connection
No.
at that point once she was in the office, right? So it was a sense of comfort for her, I think, without even thinking about it, without even realizing it.
a routine.
It was exactly a routine. Yeah. Even when she starts getting money, right? That she's like, okay, well now I can just take the taxi all the time, right? And yeah, she dealt with isolation in the way she knew how, and that was to continue doing what I'm doing, making money, and thank God, I mean, it worked for her. Nothing happened to her because I think about like you're in New York City, right? She's in New York City.
Yeah.
There's so many people.
Dude, that's the hub of
And I'm just like,
any
nothing happened to you on your way to
Blackpink.
work. Nothing happened to you going to your house. Nothing happened to you in those offices. You're telling me everybody left except you. Like, that's insane. There has to be people scavenging, rummaging, buildings, the streets.
That's season 2 of the Severance.
Right? And so that's kind of like, I wonder how everybody else is dealing with isolation.
That's kind of interesting. It just hit me that you said that because she mentions no one else around her. That's kind of something you see with Shen Fever. Like, they do not notice people around them. Like, they're just so focused on their routines.
Yeah.
I just think everyone was so like quick to leave New York because everyone knows New York is like so freaking jam packed. Like, you're bound to get sick. And like everyone too, where her boss, she was talking to, he was like, I'm gonna go spend time with my family, you know, live out the rest of the days or whatever. And he's like, I think you should do the same. I mean, she didn't have any family, so I feel like
family was dead.
I imagine like everyone in New York just like leaving to those other special areas.
Yeah, but I mean, like Israel said, to that extent, like that's such a valid point. Like, you would think you'd come across like maybe the occasional person, like she did with the taxi driver, Eddie, or like
the people on the phone line, you know, the 911 operator.
Where are they?
And she even mentions she walks by like a Juicy Couture or something that's in total pristine condition, and you see someone just like folding clothes constantly.
And it's probably probably a fevered.
Yeah,
they
fevered, but
they
still,
definitely
like,
were
you know, that's someone.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we can go and get to the next one.
What unique elements does Severance bring to the apocalyptic genre? How does the end of the world impact the character motivations and actions?
Well, the unique thing is that the procedural part of the fever, and that they become mindless zombies just doing everyday tasks that they're always been used to.
Harmless zombies.
Yeah, harmless zombies.
I'm trying to think, like, did we get like a backstory of Bob?
Very
Like,
minor.
Very little. Yeah, it was that. It was that when they were going to the facility that he owned part of that he co-owned part of it, and so that's why he was like familiar with it. That's why he felt the ability to go to it and like kind of take it over.
But I'm like, why was he like the leader of this group? And like, why did everyone kind of just blindly follow what he said? Like, it was very culty.
I think there's a question that does touch on that since we're on the topic of Bob. So how does Bob derive power? Right? Which of his followers did you trust the most and which the least? But let's focus on that first question. How does Bob derive power?
Yeah, exactly. How did he derive?
I would think just pure intimidation tactic, you know? I mean, he was the one with the gun, with kind of the equipment, with the plan. And people looking for a way, they just defer to someone with a plan. And then eventually, someone like Bob, who has that, you know, leader, chosen one mindset.
He also introduces structure too.
There you go, structure as well.
Structure in the sense of that when they would scavenge a house, they would do that prayer. Oh, which brings me to one of my favorite things. I would love to see what it is exactly that they said so that I could put it to the tune of New Slang by the Shins.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, because they mentioned that.
Yeah, they mentioned that. And like, or Candace mentions it. Man, the Shins was one of my favorite bands. I would love to see how that sounds. But anyways, yeah, I think he provides a structure. He introduces the structure of a religion or religious texts, and people gravitate towards that. I think in any panicking situation or any situation that's novel, people are going to gravitate to an individual who kind of appears to have their
Shit together.
Yeah, shit together, you know? Which is a natural thing. But at what point do you kind of like...
Yeah, I was like, especially since he just seems so culty. And...
Right, because they mentioned like he's over here thinking he's the chosen one. And then the other folks, they're just like, dude, we survived because we got lucky.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. We're not like God's chosen people or the ones that are going to like save the earth.
He
of
ends
humanity.
up getting fevered in the end too. He wasn't.
Yeah, definitely. But we also see... also see some of the characters rebel to that control that Bob has, and Candace is part of that group. So we have Evan, Ashley, and Janelle, I believe. And so every night they do go out in a car or a truck or whatever, and they go scavenge.
First them three.
And then Candace does go with them one time where Ashley does contract the fever. But even in like situations like that, the natural inclination is to rebel, is to break out, is to do your own thing, you know? also like, who the heck is Bob? Like,
Yeah, and like it mind
you
blown.
don't know him.
It mind blown me that they were so scared too at the fact that Bob was like gonna find out that they would do this, and the fact that they had a consequence of Ashley being contracted, and then Bob was like, "No, you're gonna suffer additional consequences too."
Like, they had the means to leave. They had the car. They could have just been like, no, let's go. Like, why actively go back? Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with power structures,
Yeah.
really, and like authority.
It could also be that trauma bonding too. Like,
It
they're
could be
going
that
through this
experience,
together.
Yeah. And so while we see it as an easy thing, when you're in a dire situation like this, where the unknown is really unknown,
Yeah.
and where that routine is just disrupted, you're gonna stick with what you know.
It's almost like a tyrannical mother and her, little
Yeah.
baby ducklings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things it asked is like, who would you trust the most and who would you trust the least? And it kind of shows that like those factions gravitated towards each other.
Yeah.
Like you had the ones that, like you said, rebelled.
Yeah.
They immediately just hit it off and they
Yeah.
were like their own little faction. And then of course you have the ones that are much more maybe submissive or
Yeah.
accepting of Bob. So even like in a group like that, you still have those divisions, which is interesting. But what character would y'all like trust? Like, who did y'all think was
Janelle.
for sure?
I mean, Janelle is a real one.
She seemed like a ride or
She
die.
died for Ashley because even though Ashley was fevered,
That's right.
even though Ashley was fevered and Bob was about to kill her, she was like, no, like she jumped in front.
Yeah.
And ended
But
up.
that's what Bob
supposedly,
says.
because we don't know if he just killed her like out of
Exactly.
malice.
yeah.
That's
you
what
know?
That's what Bob says. Like, Janelle jumped in front.
Well, either way, she stayed behind for Ashley, so she was
Yeah.
still a real one.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't trust any of them.
Because we saw that with Evan, where like she thought she trusted Evan, and then
then
he
he
just
becomes a lackey.
ratted her out, and then he just killed himself later
Well, he's
on.
a boy.
He is a boy.
You right?
He is a boy. Yeah. I don't think I would trust any of them. Not even Candace either. Everyone, I think, in this situation is just looking out for themselves.
Yeah. At the
Which
end
is
of the day,
understandable. Yeah. We kind of touched on this, and so did some of the one-star reviews. How does the structure of the novel, so the interweaving of past and present, enhance your understanding of Candace's character and her journey?
it doesn't. You would think that like having that past narrative would kind of contribute to that character growth, and we see that she doesn't have anything. But like you said, it's because she's probably one of those people that's just happy with or not even happy, just content with like the bare
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
So I don't think it really enhances her experience, but it does give you a bit more understanding.
Yeah, it definitely allows me to justify her character and her actions. Although, I wonder how many months pregnant she was.
I think they said 5
Yeah.
at one point.
Damn. So she's showing, huh?
Yeah.
At that point, she's showing. Man, it must be so difficult, right?
To be pregnant during
So
a
that
pandemic.
could be another reason as to why she stayed with the group.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That was something that was brought up at Libros, though, that they were just like, she just kind of did not seem to care about or talk about the baby all
Yeah,
that much.
definitely.
Just like maybe when it was kind of convenient for her, like an out for her. But yeah, she was just kind of like, oh, I'm pregnant. Okay.
I feel like I would kind of be the same. Like during a pandemic, I'm like, this is the most worry that I have to go on. I don't want to worry about like when you have the baby, how are you gonna like feed it? How are you gonna like take care of it during this type of situation? So it's like just pretend it's not there for a little bit because you can.
Yeah.
Fair.
It could definitely.
Fair.
That could definitely be the perspective that she took.
Maybe it was something she saw as like that disrupted her routine. And that's
That
why she was just kind of ignoring
dissociation
it.
too. I mean,
Very
she has a
good.
dissociation personality.
Yeah, dissociative personality. Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. Instead of like facing what disturbs your routine, you just completely disassociate it from it. Yeah, because she travels.
coping.
Yeah, because she travels with Janelle, Ashley, and Evan to the house, to Ashley's house, and yeah,
Which is interesting going back to that, because at first they were just kind of like, no, you stay here.
because she's pregnant, right? Isn't it?
She didn't
No
tell
one knew.
anyone.
Yeah.
But they might have suspected it because they mentioned at some point in your condition, I don't think it would be good for you
Yeah.
to travel with us in your condition.
Well, Bob said that. I don't know.
It was one of the girls.
Yeah,
one
never
of the
mind.
girls. So they might have known.
Yeah, I think so. Or it might have just been one of the girls, right, that knew or something.
Yeah.
Like that. I don't know. Not everybody.
Because like you said, at 5 months,
Oh yeah.
you're
Girls looking a
probably-
little sus.
you eating good, girl, or what?
I didn't really mind the back and forth. I was like, okay, I was like, each chapter, I was like, okay, the next chapter, we're going to go
Yeah.
back to the past.
Mhm.
And I was like, the next chapter, we're going to go back to the future.
Because it just seems like for some chapters, like what they would bring up from the past, it just didn't really tie into what they were going forward right within the present. And there's, you know, like Israel, like you said, you've read books where it jumps between perspectives,
Seamlessly.
you know, and it works pretty well. There's a couple I read where it, you know,
Yeah.
past versus present, and it works pretty well. And for this one, it was just kind of like,
Random.
yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
What does the term severance signify on multiple levels, both literally and metaphorically? How does it connect to the themes of loss and change? Well, it's interesting because you do, like, they mention severance in the way that most people know it, you know, severance packages.
Yeah,
when
that's,
you,
yeah.
when you,
True.
That's literally
you know,
what I
they
was
do
thinking.
mention that in the book, but also I think severance is kind of like what we talked about earlier, how Candace just learns to, like, sever herself away from
Yeah.
the rest of the world. Like, she severs herself away from people. She's just so kept to herself. And I kind of think that's where the title comes into play.
So we've kind of like have an understanding of Candace, right? So she's living in this capitalistic ideal life, making money, gets a new apartment, moves out, and then even in the end, when the fever is present in life and the end of the world has happened, she's still going to work, right? So and she's made the decision to stay doing certain tasks and things like that. So what do you think of her decisions throughout the novel? And there are moments where you felt like she could have acted differently or should have acted differently.
Well, I mean, yeah, kind of talked about it, how
Yeah.
she had gone with her boyfriend at the time, Jonathan, who was very dead set on leaving New York, leaving like the corporate world behind.
Yes.
He was very anti, you know, capitalism,
Exactly.
anti.
But
you
like
know.
she was scared of that. She was like, man, this dude, like it may seem so freeing, but like he has no money, and like what is he gonna do the rest of his life? You know, like
Which is interesting. 'cause
Like she mentions that.
she was with him for 5 years. And, you know, during those 5 years, it seemed like another thing, routine for her at that point. And then she gets the offer to leave with her other coworkers, Blythe, and I do not remember the other lady's name. But it's like, if she had left with probably them, she probably would have been well off, because that's so far from like a routine or, you know, a comforting thing from her, that she might have been okay, like not getting Shen fever at any point if she wasn't immune to it already, you know.
Well, I think she found comfort in loneliness too. So maybe like this whole epidemic and things like that, like
She
you're
wasn't
gonna
only,
resort.
She was an only child.
Yeah, you're gonna
Yeah.
resort to what's comfortable for you, and she was comfortable being lonely. She thinks that that's what's best for her.
And I do like that we see the stark contrast of Jonathan, right?
Yeah.
I like that.
Either way, like, we knew from what we gathered, she wasn't going to make any decision out of the order. Like, the fact that she joined Bob's group, that's probably like the biggest off decision that she's made.
Yeah, definitely. Does the novel talk about how she comes to find them?
No,
I don't think so. There's not really like a big origin behind it. It's just kind of like they ran into each other
Yeah.
and
I think
accepted her into the group.
that's a pretty big moment, and I would have liked to have seen that.
yeah,
Because
sure.
it does show, because she gets that lump sum of money, then she leaves, and I would like to have her routine is disrupted, her comfort is disrupted.
that seems like a pivotal part in
Definitely.
the book
'Cause what
that
is
was
it-
kind of missed out.
I think they just mentioned like they find her driving the taxi.
Oh, really?
I think. And then that's like it. There's no further info on like their introduction.
I wonder why Ling Ma chose not to go in depth about that then.
It's very interesting because, again, we see things from Candace's perspective, and she's pretty open about everything else.
Yeah.
But this is one thing that she's not open about. So it kind of makes
Very
you think, is
interesting.
there more to
To
it?
it.
So the book does end with Candace driving back to Chicago, right?
New York.
New York.
New York. So why does she mention Chicago?
Because she's driving through Chicago.
Oh, I see. Okay, very good. So she's driving through Chicago, which is where Jonathan is from,
And
right?
I think where he was going to move back to.
And so she's driving through Chicago, and then we're hearing her narrate what her thoughts and things like that. And then she thinks of a memory, right? She thinks of a memory of when she was 6 years old in Chicago or something like that. And the car starts beeping because it's running out of gas. And the car stops. She gets out of the car and she starts walking. And that's how the book ends.
Right. Because mentions the bridge, because she mentions the Brooklyn Bridge a couple times, how she's like, I've never been here, I've never crossed the Brooklyn Bridge in my life, and I'm doing it right now for the first
Yeah.
time. And it mentions the Red Bridge and that New York's like right there, and then she's just walking into the abyss that is New York now.
Yeah, Chicago is nowhere near New York, so I don't know how far Homegirl thought she was gonna get. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, because it mentioned she makes it like close to New York.
Oh.
does she?
Because
So how is she
like a half
walking,
a tank of gas?
like towards Chicago? Like,
she passes Chicago and she makes it pretty close to New York. Because
oh,
they mentioned
okay, cool.
They mentioned the crane, that tower that
Oh, okay,
fell.
gotcha,
and, like,
gotcha. I see. So she's driving through or by Chicago, and then she remembering the memory of when she was 6 years old, and then she's closer to New York at some point.
Yeah, like
and that's where she gets out.
she's fairly close.
Okay, cool.
Ish.
Gotcha.
Like she still would have to walk a
What
lot.
did y'all think of the ending of the novel though?
It was very stark, very sudden.
Yeah, very abrupt. Like, I thought I was waiting for her to have the baby. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's just going to leave off like her getting the fever.
Yeah. The more that I think about it, maybe it's just the contrarian in me. But I really like it. I think I like it with what you said, Ruby, that there was so many things that were left open, right? The baby, the group, Jonathan, all these types of things, and this disrupted it. Bam, it ends.
Yeah, the ending's
like that.
very open to interpretation.
Yeah.
You could find valid arguments for she might already have the fever and
Yeah.
she's just compelled to go back to New York. Or maybe she's just looking forward to, starting a new life with a baby in somewhere she knows. So
I mean, I doubt she was looking forward to starting a life with a new baby. She didn't care.
she didn't care about the
Yeah,
baby,
I mean, she was indifferent.
She wasn't prepared.
She was indifferent to the baby.
She doesn't have a car seat.
but yeah, it's very open to interpretation. Like what
Definitely.
you think could happen to Candace.
And I think because Bob gets the fever, right? And she
Subtly, but
She stomps on him.
Oh my God, she just goes to town on him. It's basically because when he has her imprisoned in that store, she picks up on his routine that he's walking around nightly. And when she confronts him about that, he's like, what are you talking about? I don't walk around at night. And she's like, huh. And then finally, when she makes her escape plan and she goes to find the car keys, she realizes that Bob's starting the routine, but he does not notice her at all. He's just walking and walking. So she takes that opportunity and she's like, oh, okay. She doesn't outright say it, but she's like, he has the fever. So she just, takes the keys, beats the ever-loving crap out of him, and then dips.
freaking Bob.
Which is great. I kind of like that moment because it's not something she thought about, like beating him. That's probably the one thing, like, she did. Well, one of the few things in the book that she did, like,
Yeah.
that was so different from the character we knew of
Yeah.
Candace,
She couldn't kill a little girl, but she can stomp Bob to death.
which was great.
Yeah, definitely deserved.
So, as read in the novel, everyone kind of has their store in the mall that they gravitate to, kind of become their home. So, what store in a mall would y'all pick?
I would choose Juicy Couture. Nah, just kidding.
Look fly in those outfits. I think I would pick like a Macy's or like a JCPenney's because they
Yeah.
have beds in there. They have dressers. They
I
have,
would do GMC so I can come out ripped.
swole.
So
Or like Shen Fever. You got nothing on me.
I would walk on my hands.
Hey, Ruby, can you carry this package for me? Sure.
I don't know what store I would choose. I think in the end, it doesn't really matter.
I mean, you have
doesn't-
access
don't
to
think I
all the
would
stores,
choose-
but like to
Yeah.
retreat to after a long day of routines.
A movie theater would be nice, like those malls that have the movie
That'd be
theaters.
cool. That would actually be really sick.
But yeah, overall, I really like the book. 3.5 stars out of 5. I would give it. I would definitely recommend it. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
I would recommend it as a group read because it definitely prompts really interesting
Discussion.
takes
Definitely.
and discussions, like
Yeah.
at Libros, like here on the podcast.
Yeah,
So
like I feel like I would feel not satisfied if I just read the book and that was it. I go on about my daily life. I have no one to share this to.
Yeah, as a group read, I would be more inclined to recommend it. As a solo read,
Yeah, definitely.
if it's your cup
I
of
can
tea,
see.
then sure. Like, you know,
Yeah.
that genre.
Yeah, definitely.
So if y'all want to check out Severance, make sure you head on over to cloudLibrary. We do have copies there, audiobooks and ebooks, and make sure to tune in for our next Libros pick. It's going to be Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. Audiobook and ebook also available on cloudLibrary. Should be a fun one, perfect for a spoopy month. So with that, we're going to end it here. Thanks for tuning into this episode. I'm Rosanna.
I'm Ruby.
And I'm Israel.
Bye.